It's an interesting time for business. Tariff and trade policies are dynamic, supply chains are squeezed, and cash flow, it's tighter than ever. If your business can't adapt in real time, you are in a little bit of hurt. So how do you get full visibility and adapt in real time? Over 42,000 businesses trust NetSuite by Oracle, your AI-powered business management suite. It brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all under one roof. NetSuite is the #1 cloud ERP for a reason. It's your single source of truth, giving you the data and control you need to move quickly. Real-time forecasting helps you move into the future with confidence, and with AI built in, you can automate the busy work and focus on strategy. NetSuite helps you see what's stuck, what it's costing you, and how to pivot fast. If I were running a business with a lot of moving parts, I'd use NetSuite for full control over everything. Tame the chaos with NetSuite. If your revenues are at least in the 7 figures, download the free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders at netsuite.com/SPI. That's netsuite.com/SPI. You spent months building towards launch day, but when the clock hits 0, your site crashes. Bots swarm, and loyal fans rage on Reddit. That's not good. Fanfare was built to stop that. Fanfare is the drop platform made for high-pressure moments, stampede-proof infrastructure, verified waitlists, and bot filters that actually work. Instead of refunds and rage, you get retention and revenue. And that sounds great to me. Your next launch shouldn't be a gamble. Get Fanfare's 5-step hype drop playbook and learn how to bulletproof your drop at fanfare.io/playbook. Again, that's fanfare.io/playbook. Hey, I get it. You've worked really hard to build up your business, and it's doing great. So great that you need help now. The most important thing for your business is to hire the right people to support it. So how can you find amazing candidates quickly? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you stand out and hire fast. And with Sponsored Jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, Sponsored Jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. And it's one of the largest databases of job seekers, too, giving business owners access to a wide range of candidates. And one of the things I love most about Indeed is the job alerts feature. I get notified when new candidates apply. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/smartpassive. Just go to Indeed.com/smartpassive right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/smartpassive. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need.
This is the Smart Passive Income Podcast with Pat Flynn, session number 249. Pivot.
Welcome to the Smart Passive Income Podcast, where it's all about working hard now so you can sit back and reap the benefits later. And now your host. Hey, if you see him, ask him about the one time in his life he was grounded. Pat Flynn.
While DIY website tools are everywhere, most fall short on design and performance. Hit publish. Framer ships your site worldwide in seconds. No code, no compromises. Framer is a powerful, user-friendly platform that delivers developer-level results without writing a single line of code. Make your designs move and convert with Framer. Framer brings your site to life with powerful animations, dynamic content handling, and a design-first approach that helps your site stand out. Framer is the design-first, no-code website builder that lets anyone ship a production-ready site in minutes. Browse hundreds of pixel-perfect templates or even design something of your own on a totally blank canvas. Add bold animations like appear effects, text effects, scroll and looping animations, and much more in seconds. And it's free to start. The built-in AI handles the heavy lifting of generating starter layouts and can even translate your entire site to any language. On the back end, you'll get responsive breakpoints, built-in hosting, a flexible CMS, and privacy-friendly analytics. Ready to build a site that looks hand-coded without hiring a developer? Launch your site for free at Framer.com and use code SPI to get your first month of pro on the house. That's Framer.com, promo code SPI. Framer.com, promo code SPI. Rules and restrictions may apply. With running your own business, legal questions always come with the territory. Like, can I use this contractor agreement? What do I do if a client doesn't pay? Am I even structured the right way for taxes? Instead of Googling your way through legal landmines, imagine having a law firm ready to address your business's legal needs without the sticker shock. That's what you get with Legal Shield's small business plans. Legal Shield helps entrepreneurs access real legal help on contract reviews, collection letters, business formation guidance, and even help navigating IRS audits. Members can schedule consultations, upload documents through the app, and get support from a provider law firm that knows small business laws in your state. Plus, consultations on taxes or trademarks help you stay ahead of potential problems. And if a client is late on a payment, Legal Shield steps in with professional collection letters so you can protect your hard-earned revenue, all for a fraction of the price of hiring a lawyer on your own. Go to LegalShield.com/SPI or call 833-570-9980 to learn more and get big business legal support without a big business budget. That's LegalShield.com/SPI.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Pat Flynn here, and welcome to episode 249 of the Smart Passive Income Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm also joined with an amazing person who I met very recently in New York, who has just come out with a great book. And not only that, she has a method for helping us understand, well, what do we do next? How do we know if we need to actually make a change in our business, in our life, and how do we do that? She's somebody who speaks and helps people at Google with their careers, and her name is Jenny Blake. You can find her at jennyblake.me. The name of the book is called Pivot, and I was kind of referencing an episode of Friends there, the one with the cop, I think it was. Anyway, the pivot method is what she's talking about here today, and learning about what we can do to figure out, well, what do we do next? And how do we know? It's sort of along the lines of the one thing, but more so into the, well, how do we make a change if we're sort of at a juncture or a fork in the road in our business or in our lives? And what's cool about Jenny is she's just so down to earth, so kind, and so knowledgeable. But not only that, her book is one of the most organized books that I've read. And what I mean by that, it's really well put together, really easily read. It was featured as Book of the Month here on SPI at one point. If you want to check out the book club, go to patsbookclub.com. I send out an email every single month with a new book that I'm checking out. And Jenny's book was featured recently, and I'm excited to feature her today to help you with some of the upcoming decisions you're making, especially here at the beginning of the year. I think a lot of you might find some great use out of this episode, and I'm, again, really happy to introduce Jenny to you. So here we go. This is Jenny Blake from jennyblake.me and also thepivotmethod.com. Here we go. What's up, everybody? I'm so happy to welcome and introduce Jenny Blake to you. Jenny, thank you for coming on the show. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you, Pat, for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
And it was such a pleasure to meet you earlier this year as well when we met in New York. And, you know, I've heard a lot about you, and it was so cool to meet you because your personality is just one of those that you can easily click with. And so I'm very excited to introduce you to everybody here on the show today. So to start off, why don't you tell everybody what is it that you do and how did you get there?
Yeah, so thank you. And I loved meeting you too. For all of you listening, you may not see Pat every day. You hear his voice. Pat has rockin' style. So you walk into that room, it's like pocket square and everything. Amazing.
Thank you.
Who am I? I'm an author. That's how I identify. I think all of us who are doing online business, what do you ever say to friends and family of what do you do?
Right.
Because there's so much we do behind the computer. But I say author because my books, I love thinking about big ideas, and I love simplifying complex problems and helping people organize their brain. And so from the books, the rest of my business activities follow, like coaching and speaking. And I also have a podcast. And quick background, born and raised Silicon Valley, worked at a startup for 2 years, then Google in training and career development for 5.5. And now I've been on my own for almost 6. And thankfully, I'm still not living down in a van by the river. So that's good.
So you were living in a van by the river?
That was my big fear of leaving Google. I was really terrified. And I mean, huge thanks to people like you who are out there actually saying how to make it work. But I didn't know if I was cut out for entrepreneurship. I really didn't. And I thought I had always been a straight A student and followed the rules. And so I did well at Google. And I just thought, I'm not one of those people that could do this on my own. So not without roller coasters, for sure. Not without almost having to fold my business halfway through. But that moment is what eventually sparked me writing Pivot and figuring out a better way to plan our next moves.
And we'll definitely get into the book. It's one of my favorites. I don't know if you know this, but I'll tell you now anyway. We're featuring it in our book club in an early month in 2017. So I'm super stoked to get that into people's hands. And it's called Pivot. The only move that matters is your next one, which is such a great tagline. It makes complete sense. I think one of the things that's very challenging for us entrepreneurs is, well, how do you know if that next move is the right one? I mean, we've all read The One Thing and all those kinds of books. But then how do you know if that next one thing is the right one thing? And I think that's where we're going to dive into a lot of things today. But I'd love to learn more about your story. And in terms of getting over that fear of making that transition from Silicon Valley and startup world to your own stuff, at what point in the journey, if you come across it, did you ever feel like finally that you were confident in this new path that you were going down?
Well, I had started my first blog, Life After College, in 2005.
Oh, wow.
So I'd been at this for a while and never thought that it was going to be a full-time thing. It was kind of a side project, a hobby. And I know you know how it is, Pat, when we start these things, like, what's this new technology? I'm going to give it a go. It becomes like this lifelong commitment because there's no end date unless we decide to fold shop. But slowly it developed momentum. And while I was at Google, I was working on a book on the side called Life After College. And I ended up getting an agent and a book deal. And so when my book was coming out in 2011, I asked for 3 months of unpaid leave from Google. And I really had no intentions of leaving the company. I had a perfect on paper job, but there was still a part of me that I was kind of burning out a lot. Google itself is a really intense environment, not to mention trying to have a book and a blog on the side. And so part of me also knew that I couldn't do both much longer. At some point, I was going to have to choose. And so as soon as I started that sabbatical, I realized I could spend all day working on what had previously been my side hustle, but all day, every day. And I was really enjoying it. So I wouldn't give this same advice, but even though I wasn't earning any income from it, I ultimately made the decision not to go back to Google. And I had 6 months of what I call pivot runway. And so, you kind of asked, when did I have the confidence? For me, in my life, confidence kind of comes after the fact. I feel really scared a lot of the time, scared, insecure, unsure. And when I take steps and they feel aligned with what I call soul goals, things start to happen and work out. And as a result, I feel confident. But I've learned not to wait for 100% confident or courage up front.
Nice. So what does your business look like now? We're at the end of 2016. People are listening to this early 2017. What's Jenny Blake's business overall now? Like, what are the different components? How are you generating an income?
One of the big focuses for me in the last 5 years since Life After College came out was more scalable sources of income. So in addition to, I do the podcast, coaching, and speaking, but I'm really excited to announce that Google is licensing Pivot as global career development training.
What?
So that's
no way.
Yeah, it's really
full circle,
exciting.
huh?
Yeah, it is. And it's so awesome that they're willing to still work with me. Even though I left, we have a great relationship. And there's no company I would rather partner with than Google. And they shaped so many of the ideas in the book. Yeah, right. For obvious reasons.
That's cool.
But also, yeah. So, and then I trained a team of 6 pivot coaches. So I don't have to be the only one kind of available to be able to support people. I have a private community called Momentum. And those are the main income sources. And then I have the newsletters. I have the Pivot website and blog, Jenny Blake, and Life After College. So I still run 3 different web properties, but it all kind of rolls up to the same places, which is the newsletters and the podcast. And then if people want to engage more, Momentum and coaching, and then speaking on the company side.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. Well, congratulations on that opportunity. That's amazing. So what does that mean? They're buying copies of your book and giving it to all their employees, or a certain number of them?
We'll see. I don't know if it'll lead to direct book sales, but more using Pivot as a framework to talk about career development.
Oh, I see.
And to guide people through planning their pivot. And it's cool because one of the messages that I'm not sure comes through when you just see the book on the shelf is that not all pivots have to be huge, drastic, crazy career changes. It's really, I just wanted to put a method to this process of asking what's next so we could all become more efficient at it. So even within your existing business, figuring out what's next and pivoting within whatever you're currently doing is just as well as the bigger moves that we see celebrated in the media.
Well, let's get into that framework. How does one even know where to start? Obviously, you talk about it in the book. I'd recommend everybody check it out. But let's break it down for people. I think when people approach, okay, what their next steps are, there's a couple ways to go about it. There's a couple scenarios that come into my mind, and that is you don't even know where to start because you don't have any ideas and you're kind of worried and overwhelmed and you don't want to make the wrong one, so you just don't do anything at all and you continue doing whatever it is you were doing and being complacent and, kind of being unhappy because you're more satisfied with being where you're at now versus all the fear that comes with making the changes. Or you have like a bazillion ideas and like 100,000 different ways you can go, which leads to the same result, doing nothing at all because you're just unsure of yourself. So how does one even begin to understand what their next moves are and where that pivot should be?
Right. I know. And we have a lot of simpatico ideas from Will It Fly too around experiments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But essentially, one thing is just recognizing when you're at a pivot point. And I felt like I was having a midlife or quarter life crisis every 2 years. I mean, every 2 years I was doing all this existential searching. Who am I? What do I want? What's important? What's next? And I started to feel like either there's something really wrong with me. I'm destined to forever be unhappy. I can't even be happy at Google. Like I must be one of those entitled millennials that the media is talking about. Or we're all going to have to ask and answer what's next more frequently. And as I started to do research for the book, the latter proved to be true. So one thing I wish I hadn't done so much of is beat myself up. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us, when we're at a pivot point, when I say pivot point, I mean a feeling of restlessness or a little bored or there's more out there, or just straight up body is hitting you with cosmic 2x4s, like getting sick. I had a friend who would get panic attacks whenever she would get off the subway on her way to work. So if we don't listen early on to the signals, they start to really scream at us.
Right.
But essentially, I remember, so I was a couple years into running my own business. I'd become known as the girl who left things, the girl who left college, the girl who left Google. But who am I? Like, who am I beyond these things I've left behind? And I kind of paused all my business activities, was having a really tough year for personal reasons too. And my bank account started to dwindle to the point where I had to move. In order to stay in New York, I needed to move to a new apartment. My rent doubled overnight. My business income didn't. And I had to put down 3 months rent for security deposit because I'm an entrepreneur and they don't trust us here in New York. And at that point, this is as recent as January 2014. And I didn't know how to pay rent in 2 weeks. I really didn't have the money unless I was going to liquidate non-cash assets, which was my worst case scenario. So I spent a lot of time, I guess a long way of saying, I took my pivot point very personally. And I kept thinking, I'm delusional. My inner critic must have been right. I'm really not cut out for this. The jig is up. I should probably, do I just throw in the towel? And I think it's okay to ask some of that for our own self-awareness. But at the same time, what I came to realize is that pivots are so often a product of our success, that we're doing something right. We've outgrown this previous path or direction. And so it's very natural, especially among entrepreneurs and side hustlers, that naturally when we finish a big launch or a creative project, there's going to be this void that opens up and this desire to create. That's why we're all doing this. Totally. Because we live for that creation process and creating something out of nothing. So once you stop taking it personally, then the reason I call it a pivot, one, gender neutral and judgment neutral, but two, a pivot is not a 180. So it's not about saying what's next and trying to start from scratch. And you described two scenarios. One, just kind of choked by fear, and two, swirling like a beehive with too many ideas. And in both cases, if someone were to really study what was already working in their career or business and double down on those things, the pivots become much more intuitive. And it's not to say that any of us ever know the answer up front, but by doing small experiments, exactly as you talk about in your book, we can start to test which one will take on the most momentum. So I think of pilots, I call them pilots in the book, like TV show, you do pilot episode, helps the network
totally
figure out the whole series. They're like racehorses at the Kentucky Derby. In our businesses, you just line up 5 or 6 pilots. You don't have to know which one's going to take off, but you let them start to build a momentum of their own.
Okay, so and then pivoting isn't necessarily for people who are coming at a point in their life where they're feeling distressed or overwhelmed or anything. Can it be also for people who are doing really well and they're trying to up their game? Like, it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's kind of a what's next because they just finished something awesome and they want to do another thing that's awesome.
100%. I see pivot the better we get at pivoting, the more it becomes a continuous process and not these jarring pivot points. And so I think actually the most successful pivoters and entrepreneurs are those of us who are constantly asking, cool, what's working? Where do I want to end up a year from now? What can I double down on? What experiments can I run? And when you have pivot as a mindset, and I say in the book, like pivot is plan A, when you don't just sit around expecting things to be static and predictable, you're much better equipped to, just harness the genius inside of you. Like you said, so as much as even when things are going really well, it's about looking at awesome and how can I build from that? And so even I use pivot as a framework for even just planning instead of New Year's resolutions. Just cool. What's working and where do I want to shift into in the coming year?
Nice. I love that. And I love that you mentioned earlier strengths too. That's something, like you said, I talk about in Will It Fly, looking internally at what you're good at and what you've been doing very well and just doubling down on that, like you said. Do you have any other strategies for understanding what one's own strengths might be?
Yeah, I love thinking about two things. I know it sounds cliche and everyone's probably heard it before, but what you love to do as a kid really does count. And sometimes when people used to ask me that question, I just felt kind of vague. So I recommend breaking it down into groups. Really even ask your parents, what did you like to do when you were from like 5 to 8 years old? Okay, what did you like to do when you were in elementary school and middle school? What did you like to do when you were in high school? And unpack and kind of reverse engineer the stuff you've always been drawn to. And then look at, what do people most often come to you for advice on? And not just what they come to you for, but what do they leave with, even that they didn't expect? Is it a sense of hopefulness or optimism or practical tools? Or,
I like that.
What problems does your brain solve in its own unique way? And that can be really informative. And then the last way that I like looking at strengths is, just when does time fly? And when do you feel the most in the zone? Even if it's only 10% of what you're currently doing, and even if it doesn't seem like any viable sort of way to make a living, what do you really just look forward to? And one of my things for me, I taught myself HTML and CSS back in the day when I worked at the startup. And I can build a website and the sun will rise and set, and I don't even notice. It's really weird. It's not like I earn a living building websites by any means, but it is very helpful to me in my business as a solopreneur that I enjoy the technical aspects of managing websites. So these strengths can come into play, even if you don't have to make them your full-time thing.
That's cool. If I were to ask you what was it that you were interested in between the ages of 5 and 8, what would you say?
Well, one thing, I used to make my brother play school. So I would learn things, and then I wanted him to be smart and have a leg up. So I would make worksheets and like make him fill them out. And if he had friends over, poor guy, like if he had friends over, I would make his friends play school
that's
as well.
so funny.
And what's funny is like my job now pretty much involves teaching and creating worksheets and templates that either go in the book or on my website. And I also always loved playing business. As a kid, I would steal carbon paper from ski resorts where I thought that paper was so cool.
Oh, yeah.
And would like set up a fake ski stand and people would come fill out paperwork. And so I always enjoyed these aspects of just creating things. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that exercise a lot. Looking back, like in my book, I have them go.
What did you used to do?
Well, for me, I used to take things apart, like remote control cars or typewriters, and just try to understand how it all works and try to make sense of it all. And I think that's something that I do now in a different way, where I take these complicated processes and now I post about them and I share that information with people in a way that's easy to consume so they can understand these technical things. So, and break it down. And, I would try rebuilding it in a certain way or in a different way to see if it worked, and, experimentation, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I love looking back that far. In my book, I only have people go back to their first job because that's kind of the first time they're kind of put to work. But going back even further, I think that's really smart. And I want to encourage everybody to try and be a kid again, right? Like I think we lose that as we get older, and that's something I'm trying to make sure my kids grow up with, is that idea that they can always be kids no matter how old they are.
I love that. One thing, well, two things. I have to give a PSA for your brain and unpacking things that everyone should know. If you're starting a podcast, Pat Flynn, it is your guide to podcasting that like held my hand through every step of taking mine pro. So thank you for that. You're so good at what you do.
Thank you for that.
And yeah. And the second thing I'll say is that I think that not just being a kid, but what are you wildly curious about? And that has that playfulness of being a kid. I think it's really fun to kind of look at what podcasts are you subscribed to? Which ones are you drawn to? Where do you beeline in the bookstore? What's on your Amazon wish list, even if you haven't bought it yet? What are the books on your shelf you've been collecting? Our brain, our subconscious gives us these clues. And believe it or not, they're already within our sphere of gadgetry and online wish lists and purchase history. And so sometimes it's about looking at like what's here right now that Neil Pasricha, in his book, The Happiness Equation, he calls it the Saturday morning test. Like, what would you be doing on Saturday morning when you feel you have no other obligations?
Fishing.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, or playing music or something. Anyway, this is really cool, Jenny. Let's go into the pivot sort of framework. Like, can you give us a rundown on what that exactly means? And we've talked about a lot of why we need to be conscious about what's happening in our lives and why one might need to go through a pivot. But in terms of actually doing it, give us a rundown.
Yeah. The metaphor that came to me, so I described being in that pickle of needing to pay the rent. And when I started to double down on what was working, I kind of developed, reverse engineered, because I'd been doing coaching and career development even in my time at Google, but I wanted to map the process, just like you, like unpack it, understand it, and simplify it. And by the end of that year, I ended up tripling my income, hit 6 figures for the first time. So it does work. And it was to think of a pivot like a basketball player. When they stop dribbling, one foot stays firmly planted, and that's your strengths and what success looks like a year from now. And then the pivot foot can scan for opportunity or passing options. And scanning is about people, skills, and projects that are compelling. And then the third stage, pilot, is about, in the basketball analogy, passing the ball around the court. Where do you have the best chance to make a shot? And a good pilot will help you test 3 E's. Do I enjoy this new direction? Can I become an expert at it? And is there room to expand in the market? And so you can plant, scan, pilot over and over for months, if not years, perfectly happy, whether in your own business or in a side hustle or even within a role if you're working at a company. And then eventually comes time for a launch. And that's the fourth and final stage that in some cases we got to go all in. So for, launching a book, quitting your job, changing jobs, starting a business, all of those involve some amount of uncertainty, but through following the stages of the pivot method, the goal is reduce risk. And as you described at the beginning, help people get out of their panic zone and into a zone where what I call the stretch zone, where it feels edgy and exciting, but doable.
I love it. You had mentioned determining whether or not there's room in the market. I'd love to go deeper into that one because I know that's a big one for a lot of people when they're trying to do something new. They always see the competition out there and they're like, oh, I'm late to the game. How can I bring anything new to the table? I'm just setting myself up for failure. How do you approach some new direction in a way that's going to help motivate you in a positive way instead of kind of bringing you down?
A couple things. One of the biggest mistakes I made as a solopreneur was too much emphasis on what business model I should have. And I know that sounds weird, and especially given all the great stuff that you teach about, but I got so caught up in the online marketing world.
Well, like what kind of questions were you asking yourself?
Well, I was literally asking, what kind of business model should I have? What's going to be most sustainable? And I kept trying to basically force a business model top down on my community or the market, and the broader market. And it just didn't get me anywhere. And it was only when I asked, how can I be most helpful? I had to really, I remember a moment where I had to stop and say, enough already with what kind of business model is going to serve me. Like it wasn't getting me anywhere. And so I had to shift and say, how can I be most helpful? And I've come to have many more spiritual practices actually in the last few years, but at that time was the very beginnings of me saying, you know what? I kind of give up on trying to top down decide a business model and instead just show me. My mission is to be as helpful as possible to as many people as possible. How can I do that? How in my own life and business right now, just as it is, can I be helpful? How am I already helping people? How can I do a little more of that? How can I experiment with different ways of doing that? And so just that shift really got me unstuck of thinking only on the business model side. And I do think some mix of both is important. And then listening. And I know you talk about this too, Pat, but for me, I had to go back, and what got me out of the pickle I was in was going back to former clients who had already hired me in the past and saying, I'm thinking of creating this thing. I would love your feedback. And I hate the phrase, can I pick your brain? So one thing I recommend is I set up 30-30 calls with friend tours. So I recommend reaching out to people or past or former or prospective clients and do
you
a
say
30-30.
friend tours?
Yeah.
Like friend
tours.
mentors?
Like friends. Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. People at your same level or similar, and saying, I would love your input on something I'm working on for 30 minutes. And then I'm happy to help you brainstorm on anything you're up to for 30 minutes as well. And that way it's not such a one-sided conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set up 30-30s with a bunch of my former coaching clients and was thinking of creating this private coaching community called Brilliance Barter that's now Momentum, but they helped shape it. And they gave me all this great input so that when I went to launch that program, they had created it. It was exactly what they wanted. And there would have been no way for me to guess that if I just had blinders on of what would fit the business model. So that, I think, listening to the market, whatever market is in front of you, even if it's 5 people, is really important.
So what was something in those conversations that you learned that was surprising to you?
One thing people talked about was wanting accountability, wanting feedback, thinking about programs that didn't work. How many of us have joined like a private Facebook group and like, I don't know, for me, it's not sticky. Right. So they just helped me understand what real success would look like, and even pricing. I even asked what kind of range, so that I could design a program that would kind of fit within most of their budget. And that was helpful too. So, and then I launched it, and it evolved over time, but just being able to launch it imperfectly and get it out and start testing it, then I think sometimes you've got to kind of launch the plane initially. And at Google, we had a saying, launch and iterate and be scrappy. And then some amount of building the plane while flying it. And so for those early customers, there is a certain amount of kind of faith in you and your ability to co-create. And for that reason, I also gave them really low rates, and they got a founder's discount, and they were grandfathered in at those rates because out of gratitude for them helping me work out the kinks along the way.
How do you determine who do you speak to if you are just starting a business? I mean, you said you already had coaching clients, so that was obviously where you would start. But for those who are listening who are like, this all sounds great, but I don't have any contacts, how would you respond?
Yeah, I mean, this is where understanding who is your target, your ideal client, and I think be very specific and be selfish. Don't feel like, oh, your ideal client has to be some broad thing. I mean, there was a point, the lingo on my Life After College coaching page started out so cliche. Like, do you want more fulfillment in life? Just exactly kind of the most generic. And then over time, I realized who I really loved being on the phone with. And so now my coaching and my Momentum program, the pages say things like, are you smart, generous, motivated, creative? I've gotten so clear on the psychographic of who I like working with, which is, we know about demographics. That's like age, sex, ethnicity, maybe where someone lives. But psychographic is a mindset. And in Pivot, I call them high net growth individuals, people who money is important, but it's not everything. And ultimately, those are the ones I'm really going to connect with. I even say things like action oriented, positive, things like that. And so once, let's say someone who has no former clients, once you know the psychographic, just start to find people who fit that description and set up 30-30s and ask, what do you struggle with? What are your challenges? What are your frustrations? What are your hopes and dreams? What would you love to see happening in your life a year from now? And if you have some hypotheses about what to create, then you can also say, here's something I'm noodling with. Is that something you'd ever be interested in? And even if it's not for you, I would love for your input for people like you, because I really admire and respect and just get their feedback with no attachment that they themselves ever become a customer.
Nice. I love it. And I also love that you have Cal Newport here on the who left you a nice little blurb about deep work. We're trying to get him on the show because I love his book and everything that he's doing. But he's very hard to get for some reason. I don't know why. Probably because he wrote a post called "Why I Quit Social Media." So it's kind of a little bit. He's very conscious about where he puts his time, which everybody should be. But anyway, going back to your book, you actually have a fifth stage that you didn't mention yet, but I really love that you added that in there, and that is lead. And I'd love for you to speak about what that means to you and why that's important. Obviously launching and, getting off the ground is important, but what does lead mean in this whole process to you?
Lead is about a better way to listen, actually, and how to, all of us are leaders in our own lives. And whether you actually manage a team of people or you want to someday, or even with friends and family, it is so easy for smart people, problem solvers by nature, to want to just dish out advice. Mm-hmm. And what I talk about in the lead chapter is how to empower other people in your life to be the expert in their own life. And so the pivot method that I shared can also be used as a conversation framework. And everybody listening can try this as homework, that the next time someone comes to you for advice, instead of just doling it out, which I actually find quite inefficient. I mean, similar to you, I love efficiency and I love things that work and that are effective. And it's just not effective to take stabs in the dark at what you think someone should do. So instead you can say, well, what is working? Okay, well, what does success look like here? All right, what's out there? Who could you talk to? Want to brainstorm some experiments? Okay, great. What will you try? And then at the end, give advice and input, but you'll have learned so much from the other person first that by the time you do get around to giving advice or sharing your own stories, it's much more relevant.
That's awesome. I love it, Jenny. Hey, I want to talk about the marketing of your book, Pivot, because I know, it's getting out there. A lot of people are seeing it, and now Google's loving it and is working with you. What have been the big things that you've done to get the book into most people's hands?
Yeah. I kind of took my own medicine here and I said, okay, because with the Life After College book launch, I completely burned out. I was launching a global coaching program at Google 3 weeks prior to the book coming out, and just in a funny
That's
timing. Yeah. So I came skidding into that first launch.
And was that self-published?
No, that was through a small press called Running Press.
Okay.
And I had such a I'd never launched a book, and I was living in California. I didn't know any other authors. That's why I created that huge marketing spreadsheet that Seth Godin ended up sharing. But I just was so overwhelmed that I really burnt out before the book even came out. And that was a tough feeling because I felt like here's this project that I love so much, and I don't even have the energy, and I'm like skidding over that last mile of the marathon. And I didn't want that this time around. So this time around I looked and I said, what are the things that I am best at and that are the most joyful in descending order? So number one, being on podcasts like this. I love it. It is so joyful for me to just talk to awesome people and have interesting conversations. So I made that the top part of my strategy, just lining up a podcast tour. And then in descending order, for example, one of the things for me that I find really challenging, I wish I didn't, but I do, is writing new original content. I ended up doing an article here and there, like one for Fast Company, but in general, I felt so spent from writing the book. I just didn't have it in me to come up with new stuff. So I really tried to ask the PR rep at the publisher, wherever we can we pitch an excerpt, or can we do a Q&A, or even better, a phone Q&A? Because anything that involved writing, I just didn't have the energy for.
Yeah.
So kind of like working top down from what could make a big impact and what I really enjoyed, and then making the most time for those things.
And then what are some of the future plans you have related to the Pivot brand and book? Are there like events, or like what's your ultimate goal with it?
Yeah. I mean, I really believe books take on a life of their own once they're in the market. And my dream, as much as I did do a launch push and I gave it everything I could for those 2 or 3 weeks, at my heart of hearts, I call it a tortoise marketer, like slow and steady, kind of long tail wins the race. And so My biggest hope and dream for it is just that people find it incredibly helpful. And because of that, everybody who finishes it wants to tell one or two friends. And that's how the book will really grow virally and exponentially over time. And beyond that, I mean, it'd be amazing to see more companies pick it up. My hope is to just give people a shared language to talk about change and to manage the change process in a way that doesn't feel like a crisis. And so programs like pivot coaching or momentum or the licensing to companies, all of that is ways that I've tried to be smarter about having things be more scalable with this second book so that the message can spread as far as it can.
Awesome. Jenny, thank you so much for all this amazing information. So everybody's listening to this, actually those who are subscribed are listening to it in January of 2017. So it's the start of their new year. What advice or questions you might have people to be able to ask themselves, or what would you say for people out there who are listening, who are motivated, but they just don't know what the next steps are? Let's leave them with one thing to help shape their mind in the right way before leaving this podcast.
Sure. Well, one of the biggest mistakes pivoters make is saying, okay, or it's January 2017, what's out there? And again, going outside yourself first. Come home, really go within and say, what would I love to have happening by the end of this year? What does smashing success look like? How much do I want to be earning? What do I want to be learning? What kind of impact do I want to have? What does my ideal average day look like? Who am I surrounded by? If you can paint the picture of that vision, and 1 year vision, 1 year is plenty. None of us can predict the future, nor should we try. But that's the step that so many people want to skip, and it might even seem frou-frou, but it's actually so helpful. And when you're anchored in that resonant, compelling vision, the next steps that follow will reveal themselves and are often so much clearer. And I kind of say, like, as you take one step forward, the universe unrolls the red carpet. Like, that's how you know you're on the right track. And the other thing I'll say for everyone listening is, and I know you talk about this too, Pat, but just pick one thing that's really exciting and the one next step. And that's all we can ever ask of ourselves. Don't expect that you're going to feel ready. You're not. That's why we're high net growth individuals. No doubt anybody listening to your podcast, Pat, is high net growth because we are here. We're here spending free time learning. And so know that if you weren't a little nervous and a little anxious and a little insecure, it wouldn't be big enough for you.
Yeah, I love that. I always tell that to people. If you're not nervous, it probably means you're not going big enough. And so hopefully all of you are nervous this year because you got some amazing things happening. So Jenny, thank you so much for joining me today and motivating people and getting people familiar with the pivot method. Where can people go find the book and yourself?
The best place to go is pivotmethod.com. And if you go to /toolkit, there are a ton of free templates based on everything we talked about today.
Nice. Thank you, Jenny. We appreciate you, and good luck on all the stuff that you're working on. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Pat, and huge thanks to everybody for listening.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Jenny Blake. Again, you can find her at jennyblake.me, and that toolkit she mentioned is over at thepivotmethod.com/toolkit. There's no opt-in required to check out all the resources she has there, which includes an assessment that you can take, a pivotability self-assessment. And you can make your pivot profile, and you can do that under 5 minutes. So go ahead and check that out. Jenny, thank you so much. I know you're listening to this show. I appreciate you. And I appreciate all of you for listening all the way through to the end here, as always. The next episode is going to be really cool. We're going to be featuring not success stories, but failure stories. And these are stories of failures that then turned into success. And they are some of your stories. So I actually asked the SPI audience a while back to send voicemails sharing some of their failure stories that which have turned into a success in some way, shape, or form. And we have a number of those to share. Really inspiring, but also really actionable too. Because I think a lot of us can relate to failing in our business, and hopefully we are failing as often as possible, because the more often you fail, the more often you can learn and make adjustments and pivot into the right position. So anyway, look out for that episode next week. That's going to celebrate episode 250. How crazy is that? But of course, this one is episode 249. If you want to get the show notes and links and everything mentioned in this episode, head on over to smartpassiveincome.com/session249. Hey guys, what's up? You might remember a couple weeks ago I mentioned Noah Kagan's brand new podcast. Well, it's out now, and I wanted to invite Noah Kagan on the show to talk about the inflection point really quick and really what it's about. So Noah, welcome, and tell us about your new podcast.
What up, Pat? What up, Flinians? Love you guys. And I think if you guys are enjoying Pat's show, you'll be enjoying mine right afterwards. What I'm doing on it is talking to really, really interesting people that I've just been fascinated to meet and I'd share their stories from, Tim Ferriss, who some of you heard of, to people like my stepdad, who is one of the best stock pickers I've ever seen. 2, we're going to be doing challenges. So like no complaining week, no complaining month, other things like the coffee challenge, which a few of you guys have heard of. Mm-hmm. And lastly, case studies. So bringing on really interesting people, talking about their business, and then what do they do and how do they solve the problems that they're facing so you can kind of improve and figure it out for yourself too.
I love that. And for those of you who don't remember, Noah was a very popular guest on the show way back when, and he did a number of challenges. People loved that. So I look forward to listening to the show. Noah, you had mentioned to me that you wanted to do something really interesting here with this sponsorship spot, something that's really never been done before. Why don't you talk about that really quick and share it?
Yeah, I think it's either going to be a great idea or a bad idea, which I think those are always the most interesting. So the challenge is I want to get as many Pat Flynn listeners, the Flinians, to come and check out the inflection point. So here's the challenge. I'm going to drop 10K, like 10,000, 10,000, to the Flinians. And all you have to do is download, check out the show. If you're on your phone, you can go do it right now. Just search Noah Kagan or search the inflection point. Subscribe to it, and then just send me an email, and I'll Venmo or PayPal you $1. And all you have to do is send an email to ilovepat@okdork.com. If you can throw a screenshot in, cool. If not, that's fine too. And the first 10,000 people, I will drop $1 on. Because I was thinking, man, I could spend that on ads. Why don't I just give it to Pat's audience and have them check it out? You guys get something interesting, and then I get people checking out my show.
I love that you run these experiments, Noah. I can't wait to see what the reaction is. So what's that email one more time?
Yeah, so subscribe to Noah Kagan's The Inflection Point and send an email to ilovepat@okdork.com. First 10,000 people, I will hook up with $1.
Awesome. Thanks again. Guys, I've really been enjoying this podcast, and I will continue to do it in the future for you. I know a lot of you have taken the information that I've shared here, the interviews that we've done with other experts and other people, and have actually taken action with it. And I just love you for that. I'm so thankful that I have an audience who is actually not just learning, but learning and putting things into place to make change in their lives and the lives of others too. I mean, we're all here to serve other people, I hope. But I know a lot of you also need a little bit more help. I've been getting messages left and right from people who have been asking for more and deeper information about certain things. So what I've done is I've actually put together a number of courses, and there's more courses coming in the future, thanks to your recommendations. If you go to smartpassiveincome.com/courses, you'll see a list of the courses that are currently available there or that you can sign up for the waitlist for. Again, that's smartpassiveincome.com/courses. Check it out. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode. All the best. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Passive Income Podcast at www.smartpassiveincome.com.
Have you dreamt about being your own boss, but still haven't made the first steps to making that dream a reality? Well, I get that. Starting a business can feel super overwhelming with legal forms, paperwork, finances. It's a lot. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about Taylor Brands. Taylor is a complete business builder designed to make launching your business simple and stress-free. You can register your LLC in just minutes, keeping your personal assets and the business assets separate from day one. From there, you get access to everything you need to get off the ground. Legal documents, licenses and permits, invoicing and bookkeeping tools, and even a 100-day business coaching program, all designed to help you hit the ground running. You'll also get a free, personalized business plan, branding tools, and so much more. And of course, listeners of this show get an exclusive 35% discount to get started. All you have to do is head to taylorbrands.com/SPI. That's TAILORBRANDS.com/SPI. Stop dreaming, start building with Taylor Brands. Look, I get it. You want to grow your business, but trying to sell to hundreds or even thousands of people gets very exhausting very fast. But what if you could sell at scale with a simple, powerful quiz? ScoreApp helps you sell to more people without adding more to your plate. You build a quiz or assessment that your audience actually wants to take. Then they answer a few quick questions and get a personalized result right away. It shows them where they're at and what they need to do next and how you can help. And you build huge amounts of trust before you make even a single offer. No hard sell, no chasing leads, just value at scale. Get 50% off the first 3 months using the discount code SPI. All you have to do is just head to scoreapp.com/SPI. Again, that's scoreapp.com/SPI.